Mayday, Mayday, Mayday! Air Transat 236. The right engine has flamed out, and we're down to just a few hundred kilograms of fuel left.
Crossing halfway the ocean, they don't know if they will land safely or if the plane will crash. Let's go back to where our journey begins. Our journey begins in Toronto International Airport, and today's flight will take us 7 hours because we are headed to Lisbon in Portugal. The plane is Airbus A330, built in 1999. The Air Transat brings this plane on board in the year 1999 because they have purchased it from those that are making the planes. Before August 24th, 2001, 4 days to this flight, the engineers noticed something worrying in the plane. They can't really tell what it is, but the solution is, let's change the right engine of this Airbus A330. They contact their bosses accept, and they make a call to Rolls-Royce. Remember, if you didn't know that Rolls-Royce also makes the aeroplane engines, know it today. I also just read it when I was coming to tell you this story. So they contact Rolls-Royce. Rolls-Royce packs the new engine and flies it to Toronto, Canada. The engineers receives this engine. They change the engine to the Airbus A330 that's supposed to fly on 24th of August 2001. Everything is set, but the engineers realize the Rolls-Royce packed the engine without putting the hydraulic system, the hydraulic tube. So they tell their bosses and tell them that we are lacking something. We don't have the hydraulic tube to this engine. Now the bosses assume and tells them, you know what to do? Just go to where our aeroplanes are parked. We know surely well there is a right engine. We can't lack the hydraulic tube. So the engineer said, oh, okay, let's go take that tube and come and fix it to this new Airbus A330 that is supposed to fly on 24th of August. Now the engineers fix the tube, they test the plane, and they see everything is okay. Traffic control clears Airbus A330 for the flight coming 24th of August 2001. Now, it's midnight. Airbus A330 is ready to take off. Passengers are on board. We are having 293 passengers with us today. And beside the 293 passengers, we are having 13 crew members with us, totaling us to 306 passengers on board. Now we have to know those that are going to fly this plane. We are having our co-pilot, Robert Piche, and we are having first officer, DeJager. They are all experienced. Now DeJager is 28 years old and Piche is 48 years old. All of them well experienced because they flight several hours in these flights of Airbus A330. The plane takes off from Toronto, Canada, and flies to the sky. Everything goes on well. The first hours of the flight is okay. Remember, our departure time is 12:52 a.m. That's midnight towards 1 a.m. Now, our flight goes on well. For the first 3 hours, it goes on well. Remember, from Toronto, Canada to Lisbon, Portugal, we have to cross over the sea. The flight takes 7 hours, but we are crossing over the sea. Now for the first those hours, the flight is okay. Everything is under control. The flight attendants serve the passengers whatever they can serve them, the snacks, people drink, everything is okay. The engines are ongoing well. Something hits the plane after these hours of the flight. In the cockpit, the co-pilot and the first officer observe something. What do they see? They see low temperature in oil, and they also see high pressure in the oil. And again, they see in their right wing of the engine, there is where the tanks of the aeroplanes are. The wings of the engine, that is where the fuel of the aeroplanes are being stored. The right wing, the left wing, that is where the tanks are. So they notice in their right wing there is a lot loss of fuel, high consumption of fuel. They don't know if it is a leakage, or they don't know even if it is a computer error that is bringing this in the machines in the cockpit. So they don't take this serious. They call the flight attendants. No, first officer DeJager asked the co-pilot Piche, should we do the fuel transfer? The first emergency thing that you're supposed to do when you see such things is do the fuel transfer, so that the fuel comes out from the right wing and goes to the other sides, or where the fuel is supposed to be stored in the aeroplane. But co-pilot Piche tells DeJager that will put us in a lot of risk, because we will go down to the lower altitudes. Remember, at this time the plane is at 39,000 feet, the altitude 39,000 feet. So they assume and say, okay, let's not do that. So Piche calls one of the flight attendants and asks them if they're able to observe their right wing, if they can see the white fumes. If she sees the white fumes, then it automatically alert Piche that there is a fuel leakage on the right wing of the plane. Now the flight attendant leaves the cockpit and goes to the downer window, where she's able to see the right wing of the plane. But she lights it with a torch. She observes, she tries to observe. Remember, we are in the night. So she tries to observe, she observes, and she sees nothing. She goes back to the cockpit, informs Captain Piche that she has observed nothing. She's not able to see any white fumes. So Captain Piche assumes maybe it's just error in the computer system, because you know aeroplanes are also made by humans, so automatically errors can be. So they assume that, and they continue the journey. But the rate at which the right wing is consuming the fuel is really high. Remember, the left wing and the right wing, they're supposed to consume the fuel at the same time and at the same rate, without any of the other side leaving the other. So when Captain Piche sees this, he takes an action. He says, let's do a fuel transfer from the good side of the wing, from the left side of the wing to the right side of the wing. Remember, the right side of the wing is the part that is consuming a lot of fuel at a higher rate, while the left wing is okay, consuming it at the normal rate. So they transfer the fuel. So transferring the fuel, the left wing also begins to consume a lot of fuel because of that fuel transfer, and the right wing also consumes a lot. In this process, our right engine fumes up, it lights fire, meaning it fails. And they don't recall that they were doing a certain fuel transfer, so that they stop the fuel transfer from the left wing to the right wing that has already failed. They forget about this and they do not do anything. So the left wing is still losing a lot of fuel. They come up as a solution to contact the traffic control. Mayday, Mayday. This is Air Transat 236. Our right engine has fumed up and we are left with one engine. We are not able to land in Lisbon, Portugal. Remember, they're just halfway the ocean. Because this flight I told you from Toronto to Canada, we have to cross over the ocean. They're still halfway the ocean. So there is panic beginning in the plane. Immediately after their contact, they lose the left wing engine. The left wing engine also fumes up. Now the aeroplane remains without any engine. But the whites, these people that are building these planes, they know that these things can occur to a plane. And there is always a power backup in the plane that can propel the plane a little bit, not longer, a little bit. This backup power can bring up the plane to lights, the systems, the computer systems in the cockpit to work, the lights to be turned on, and maybe to contact the traffic control in the downer base. So they restart this power backup and it propels. There are some propellers that can propel the aeroplane a little bit. They serve as the engine. They can bring some thrust to the engine. And again, remember, right now our passengers are not in good health because both engines have lost power, so there is no thrust, meaning there is no pressurization in the cabin. So our passengers must put on their mask so that they get oxygen from the tubes that have been placed to bring the oxygen to the passengers. So everybody puts on their mask, even those that are in the cockpit, the co-pilot Piche and traffic officer DeJager. So with these masks on, it can only serve 15 minutes of oxygen in these masks. So everything is now under pressure inside this Airbus A330. Our engines are gone. We are only left with some backup power that can propel our plane a little bit, and it can't go anywhere closer to Lisbon, Portugal. So the power comes up, they are able to contact the traffic control in the downer base. And the traffic control in their radar, they see there is an island. The island is called, I'll write it down below. I think I'm just forgetting the island. There is an island that is being controlled by the Air Force that they can land on. So if they are able to see that island, maybe they can make it to that island. From where they are to Lisbon, Portugal, it's around 127 kilometers away. So they can't make it to Lisbon, Portugal. They just have to maneuver ways and land at this island that is being controlled by the Air Force Army. So in the Air Force Army, their traffic control, they're in their machine, and in their radar, they observe an aeroplane. They observe an aeroplane, but their systems can't really connect with their system. Remember, Airbus A330 lost all the engines, so there is no power to power up. There is not enough power to power up their systems to come back and function as normal. So that is why the traffic control in the Air Force in this island can't really know what is happening to this plane. Piche is under control. DeJager too is also under control. The passengers have realized they can't hear the sound of the engines. They can't hear the sound of the engines. So they automatically know that the plane is flying without any engines and it's really going at a higher speed. Now the wind is just, I wish well those that are traveling during these moments, best of luck. We have to travel. Even with these incidents, we always have to travel. So the only option that is left is to take this plane and land it on that island. Now the plane continues, it goes, at the speed that it approaches this island is really high. And Piche, the only option that they have, so that they take a few kilometers to a point where they can see the runway and put the plane down. So what do they decide? They decide maybe we should make a 360 turn of this plane to increase more kilometers, so that at this speed that we are approaching this island, we can't really land this plane safely. So they try to maneuver a 360 turn. But even with this 360 turn, it's not possible to cover a kilometer to a point where they're able to see and observe this runway properly, so that they land Airbus A330. So what do? They decide to take more turns. They decide to take more turns, not the 360 turns, but more turns. Those, the pilots, they know the turns that they normally take, so that they continue to cover more kilometers. Even at this point, the speed doesn't come down. So at the speed, now they can see the runway. They're holding really tight. They've released the gauges, the wheel gears. They've released the gears already, so that when the plane hits, it will find that the gears are already on. So they come with that speed. Instead of the speed of the aeroplane to increase, instead of the speed to decrease, the speed increases. Remember, at that 39,000 feet altitude that they were earlier, they were reducing in altitude at 1,500 to 2,000 feet per minute. So you can imagine how the speed was. So they release the gauges, they see the runway, and then they hit the wheels of the runway. So the plane, with that speed, it's really on a high speed. And remember, at the end of this island, you know the island, it's not that big. So the runway is also not that big. So at the end of this runway, there is a fall towards the ocean again, some feet down below. So if this plane doesn't stop at the edge of that island, at the edge of that runway, then the plane will crash, and the 306 passengers will all perish without anyone surviving. You have always had the history of ocean landings. They are not always landings that can really save the passengers that we have. They are always fatal, and no one is always found alive, except just for some few planes, of which we still don't know how they managed to land on the oceans and everybody is removed out without any injuries. Remember, with that speed that the Airbus A330 came with and dropped on the ground, some passengers have already gotten some minor injuries with them, because that pressure, you remember, something coming with a lot of speed and then landing on top of the ground and then continues to move front way. So Captain Piche and First Officer DeJager holds on the brakes of the plane. They hold tight so that the plane does not lose control at this juncture. But the speed at which the plane goes through the runway is really alarming, and Piche know automatically this plane is gonna land and drop down on the ocean. So they hold tight, they hold really tight, until this plane comes to a stop. When the passenger sees this, the aeroplane assistants, those that are always on the plane to serve the passengers and do 1-2, drops the ladder so that people can alight real fast. People are moving really quick. People are moving really quick because after the plane landing, you don't really know, it can burst on fire again. So people are really rushing out. People are really rushing out. People are really rushing out. And that is how these 306 passengers were saved by Captain Piche and DeJager, even though it was because of their mismanagement of decision. That's why this plane reached here. Remember, a plane can survive with one engine. A plane can travel with one engine. Be it that they had noticed that the right wing of the engine is losing a lot of fuel, they would have not done the fuel transfer again to the left engine. They would have just left the remaining fuel, stopped the fuel transfer from the left to the right engine, and remain with the fuel in the left engine. The engineers checked and said if they had not done the fuel transfer, the aeroplane would have landed in Lisbon, Portugal without anything happening to anybody. So because they assumed maybe that it is a computer error and they decided to do fuel transfer, that's why the aeroplane was not able to land in Lisbon, Portugal, and that's why they found themselves in the island that is controlled by the Air Force. So what happened and what really caused this plane to suffer this fuel leakage in the left wing? Remember, 4 days before this plane took off on 24th of August, I told you that there were some problems that were observed by the engineers, and they decided to change the engine. And remember, the Rolls-Royce packed the engine without putting the hydraulic tube with it, the hydraulic system with it. So when the engineers fixed the Airbus A330 in Air Transat, they told their bosses that there is a problem. The hydraulic system was not packed with this engine. Contact the Rolls-Royce so that they also pack the hydraulic system so that this engine can be fixed with this hydraulic system so that they go hand in hand. But you know money. If the plane is on the ground, there is no money being made. So the Air Transit bosses said, why don't you go in our store, look for an Airbus A330, the same as this, I know we can't lack any, and take the hydraulic system of that Airbus 330 in our store and come and fix it in this Airbus A330 of this new plane that is supposed to take off on 24th of August 2001. So the engineers go and do exactly how they are told, they fix, and they see that everything is okay. But there is always a space that is supposed to be between the hydraulic tube and the fuel line. There is supposed to be a certain space that is supposed to be over there. So this hydraulic system that was taken from the Airbus in the store, it didn't really match with this other one in this our new Airbus 330 flight 236. So when the engine was started, even at Toronto, it had already begun to tear and wear because the rubber, the tube, the hydraulic tube was tearing and wearing with the fuel line. So it had already begun tearing parts. But they didn't observe this because they could not see. They saw everything was okay. So even when Captain Piche took off, this thing was taking place. And in the halfway of the ocean, this is when now they noticed that there was a lot of fuel leakage in the right wing. So meaning the fuel line got a hole in it and it began to have some leakage. So what really saved this plane? Before this plane took off, the traffic control noticed that there was air traffic in the air. I know you are wondering, can there be also traffic in air? Yes, there is always traffic everywhere. So the traffic control that there was a traffic on the air to the normal path that they were supposed to fly, there was a lot of traffic towards that direction. So the traffic control gave them another route to use, that there was no traffic, on that other route. So without the traffic control giving them the next route, this plane would have been recorded that landed and crashed on the ocean, and 306 passengers died and were never rescued. So it just because of the traffic control giving them another route that saved this aeroplane, because with the other route it made the journey shorter, and also it made them easier to observe this island that they landed on. And that is how Air Transat 236 Airbus A330 maneuvered, and it saved its passengers. It was made and up to date. They're still on their run. If you watched till this point, thank you very much. Your storyteller was Cheris, the father of one. Thank you so much for your support. Let's meet again in the next episode. Kudos. Bye.